Well, good evening and welcome to Nashville. I'm Alan Jackson. For weeks, the world heard talk of ceasefires, negotiations, and the possibility that the conflict with Iran was beginning to cool down. There was hope that diplomacy might finally succeed. But peace is never measured by what leaders say at the negotiating table. It's measured by what happens after the agreements are made. Well, this week, Iran showed their true colors once again. After attacking commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical shipping lanes, the United States responded with overwhelming force. U.S. Central Command struck roughly 170 Iranian military targets over 2 nights. They targeted missile and drone stockpiles, air defense systems, Navy assets, military infrastructure designed to threaten regional stability. President Trump declared the ceasefire over, saying further negotiations were a waste of time after Iran once again failed to keep its word. The consequences are extending far beyond Iran. Bahrain, Jordan, and Kuwait, well, they intercepted Iranian missiles and drones as the conflict spread across the region. At the NATO summit, President Trump also criticized several European allies for refusing to support U.S. operations. As if that weren't enough, the war in Ukraine, well, it continues to grind on, with President Trump acknowledging the horrific toll of a conflict with no clear end in sight. These developments, they point to something larger than a series of disconnected crises. They reveal an increasingly dangerous world where deterrence is being tested, alliances are under strain, and America's leadership is once again shaping events far beyond its borders. So what comes next with Iran? Has the time for diplomacy finally run out? Will Tehran think twice before threatening international shipping again? Or are we entering an even more dangerous phase of this conflict? Every time we think, now we can make peace with Iran, it seems to be an increasingly slippery slope. Because to have a legitimate peace deal, you must have people of integrity with which to negotiate. And Iran simply doesn't meet that standard. Iran has been a global sponsor of terror and has been at war with the United States for at least 47 years. They took our embassy hostage for 444 days. They were responsible for the killing of 300 plus Marines in Lebanon in the early 80s. If you ask our intelligence agencies about Iraq and what was the source of many of our American casualties there, you'll get estimates as high as 75 to 80% of them were due to Iranian-made roadside bombs. They also have developed the military capability now to reach outside the boundaries of Iran and the Middle East. They arm and equip Hezbollah and Hamas. Iran has clearly showed time and time again that they don't want to be a peaceful member of the group of nations. They are terror sponsors. That's simply their nature as expressed in behavior. They've been a threat for a long time. Keep that in mind when the media and certain politicians and online commentators frame what's happening in Iran. I'm grateful for the bold and courageous approach which is being taken by this administration to not sit passively by while Iran flagrantly violates any efforts toward an agreed upon peace. Ignoring violations only invites more aggression. When Iran committed ceasefire violation in the Strait of Hormuz, the easier decision for this administration would have been to look the other way. Lower gas prices and political calm would have been an easier than re-engaging militarily. Doing the right thing isn't always the popular thing. Oftentimes, we have to choose to do difficult things. I'm reminded of Winston Churchill. He was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II. He followed Neville Chamberlain as the Prime Minister. Neville Chamberlain was a feckless politician, a coward of the First Order. Winston Churchill was not that, and he had some great quotes. I'll share a couple. The price of greatness is responsibility. And this is not the time for ease or comfort. It is time to dare and endure. Well, I'd like to use the comparison between Chamberlain and Churchill for our own season and submit to you that it's time for us to make the move from appeasement to advocacy for the truth. One is passive and one is assertive. I'd submit to you that the church predominantly has been passive for far too long. Sometimes we think words are the ultimate objective, but we have to follow with corresponding behaviors. It's biblical. The Apostle James, he didn't mince words when he said, don't just be hearers of the word, but rather be doers of the word. In other words, don't just sit there and hear God's word taught and act like it doesn't apply to you. If you really believe it, you need to act like it. You need to do what it says. When I think of the tragedies of World War II, I wonder what might have been different if the church had responded in a different fashion. Many who thought of themselves as Christians actively participated in the Holocaust. Many others remained silent as their Jewish friends and neighbors were driven out of their homes and sent to extermination camps. Well, the Christians of our generation, they may not have participated in an ethnic cleansing like that, but we have turned a blind eye to a great deal of evil and injustice, such as the abortion of more than 63 million babies since 1973 alone. You see, God's people, they really do matter in this world. When we stand up and tell the truth about what God says, evil is held at bay. When we capitulate to the culture, evil flourishes. When Christians refuse to believe in biblical values, and when we're not willing to stand up for them in our homes or the public square, when we reject obedience to the authority of Scripture, let's rather choose to honor God and cooperate with Him in such a way that He can trust us to be effective salt and light for His purposes in this generation. Well, in a moment, we'll speak with a man who's been there and done that, Scott Brown, former senator, U.S. ambassador, and military veteran. I'll be right back.
This year, we celebrate 250 years of God's faithfulness to our nation. From backyard picnics and ball games to laughter shared with family and friends, we've been given so many blessings to enjoy together. And in a world that feels increasingly divided, these moments remind us of what matters most: faith, freedom, family, and community. Alan Jackson Ministries wants to help you carry that message with you wherever you may go. This outdoor blanket and canvas tote bag are simple reminders of God's goodness and a way to spark meaningful conversations about faith and the hope we have in Him. Request your limited edition tote bag and outdoor blanket today with your gift of $100 or more at alanjackson.com or call 800-880-5102.
Tonight, we're joined by former Senator Scott Brown. Welcome back to the show, Scott.
Yeah, it's great to be with you and all your viewers and listeners.
Well, President Trump has wrapped up his NATO summit. I want you to listen to a comment he made, and then I want to get your opinion.
I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over.
Sounds to me like the president's at the end of the negotiation trail. What's your take on our status with Iran?
Well, I commend him for, I guess offering that olive branch. And I knew it. I mean, I think everybody kind of knows who they are and what they are. They've been acting like that for 47 years. They've been stringing him along for quite a while now. But he needs to be the one who's like saying, yeah, I'm done. I'm just done. There's only so many times you can, slap the president in the face and embarrass him by, not adhering to this MOU, sorry. And I think he's at his wit's end, and, good for him.
There's some pretty significant political consequences, it seems. If gas prices go back up and the economy staggers a little bit, it's going to have an impact on these midterm elections. You still think it's the right plan with that threat hanging out there as well?
Well, I thought he moved forward with the MOU because of the midterms and the fact that you had high inflation, high gas prices. The issue is we're producing more oil and gas right now than we ever have for the second month, I believe, in a row. And we really don't need that oil. And respectfully, we're doing that for, the people in that part of the world. I'm encouraged that we're going to continue to be that energy independent country. And, there may be a mechanism moving forward that we can step back from our dependence on that world oil market and just use our own and that of our friends. Now, as Venezuela is a friend, we have new fields opening up around the world. So there may be a mechanism to kind of divorce that world barrel per barrel amount and do our own thing. But what we'll have to see. Certainly those are considerations of midterms, but them not getting a nuclear weapon is a concern. And he's right on that mark. They would use it, absolutely use it. They'd use it as leverage. They threaten every single day Israel and every other neighbor, as they're doing when they don't get their way and we hit them. Instead of them hitting us and trying to stop us, they hit our, their friends supposedly and neighbors. So yeah, it's very complicated. Certainly, I thought that maybe the president should have ended it a long time ago, while he had the advantage and not give him this olive branch. But I'm not the president, so I'll support what he does, and we'll take it from there.
We've all been watching the NATO conference. Trump's comments a little bit mixed. He said there was tremendous unification, but he also called out Spain in some very plain language. What were your thoughts as that conference wraps up?
Well, I remember the first year they kind of laughed at him. They didn't take him seriously, and he predicted everything that was going to happen with Russia using their pipeline to basically control that region. And so to be energy independent is something that the president has been talking about, to buy oil from friends like us and others, and natural gas for sure. And so we now export a tremendous amount. And he also challenged them to do more to protect themselves. It was back, if I'm not mistaken, like 2.5%. Now it's up to 5%, and that's probably where it should be for every country. And the fact that Spain would not allow us to land on one of our bases in their country when we're basically doing this to, obviously create world security and eliminate Iran from having a nuclear weapon, it's embarrassing. It's just wrong. So yeah, he has every right to call Spain out, as well as the others who aren't providing any minesweepers or other, tactical efforts. It's outrageous.
Let's talk about Ukraine and Russia for a moment. The president has said that he'll make the Patriot interceptor missiles available to Ukraine. Do you think that might help bring this conflict to a conclusion? Do you have that hope?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a hopeful man. I pray every day that that's over. And you look at what's happening there. I remember when people first said, it'll be over in a couple of weeks. I'm like, no, it's going to be at least a year. Well, I was only off by 3 years. The fact that, Russia is obviously not as strong as they said or projected. Ukraine is hustling, and they're very, very creative, modifying their drones, doing things differently, striking into the heart of Russia now. There's going to be a point where it's obviously hurting Putin. It's hurting him at home, economically, internationally, with stature in the world. He could be a G8 member, and it's not, because he's not playing by the rules. He's instigating. He's trying to take over a small country, and he hasn't been able to do it. So I'm hopeful. Listen, there's only one guy in this world who can actually get this done. But those two need to play. Zelensky's come to the table saying, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm not going to Moscow. Come on, give me a break. Putin is not serious, and he will only be serious when his economy is teetering and his people are starting to question his power.
President Trump has suggested removing Syria from the list of terrorist nations. That would leave North Korea and Cuba with Iran. That's an amazing step. Do you think it's the right one to take at this time?
I'm more of a trust but verify. Give them incentives to hit. Like I would have done with Iran before releasing any money. Say, if you do this, you get that. If you do this, you get that. Same thing with Syria. Yeah, he's the better of the leaders, but he's not all that. He's not this wonderful, great guy. But you have to deal with who's in charge, certainly. So I commend the president, giving those olive branches and giving those carrots. But before you just say, oh, by the way, they're done, we're going to take them off, I think he needs to give them benchmarks to hit. I think that's the most logical thing to do.
Yeah, the Middle East is a tough neighborhood. It's not like negotiating with people that share the same worldview or a set of values that we're accustomed to. Makes it far more difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, listen, a theocracy that basically doesn't care if they live or die. They encourage their sons and daughters to be martyred, mostly sons, to do something in a terroristic, lose your life and go up and see all the virgins. I mean, what kind of country is that? That's the fact that you have the ability to basically be a thriving, flourishing country, and yet you want to continue to, be an instigator and not be a contributor. I think says it all.
Well, Scott, we need to take a short break. I hope you'll stay with us for another segment.
Sure will.
For those of you watching, if you got your phone nearby, try logging on to ajnow.com. Send us an email. We'd like to hear your thoughts on this topic. I'll be right back. back now with former Ambassador Scott Brown. Scott, let's pick up some domestic topics. The Save America Act has been a priority for President Trump. They've gotten it through the House multiple times, but it's gotten stuck in the Senate. Do you have any hopes, or what can the Senate do to pass the legislation? Seems like common sense to me.
Yeah, it does to me too. I want to make sure when I vote that somebody who's next to me is a citizen and they have the right to vote. That it is a no-brainer. And they say, well, it's only a few people, like happened when Martha Raddatz was talking to JD about housing. Well, there's only a few, gangs in our housing. And he's like, you listen to yourself. What do you mean? A few foreign gangs in our housing units in Colorado? It's the same thing. A few people voting in our voting booths, in our sacred elections. It shouldn't be anybody, and it should be a no-brainer. If there are people in the rural areas or people who need help, then we should get them the help to make sure that they have that documentation. It's the fact. What I would hope is that, Leader Thune just keeps everybody there 24/7. It's election time. You want them to do their jobs, then you keep them there so they can't go raise money. They can't go, win elections. That's what I would do, and that's what I would suggest. This is something that the president's agenda needs to be taken care of. There's been, I don't think, any judges passed in this term, if I'm not mistaken. And when Mitch McConnell was in charge, they did over 100. So, there's certainly something going on. I'm not quite sure why. They used to be very close and now they're not. So I'm hopeful that they get together and do the people's business.
Well, you have experience in the Senate. I know I'm an outsider, but I've been told that they haven't been willing to do the work to pass the legislation. Is it really that simple? They're not willing to put in the effort it takes to get some of these difficult things decided?
Well, you look at many of the bills throughout our country's history. Sometimes it took them 3 or 4 months to actually get these things done. And bottom line is, you need to work. You need to get a working filibuster, a talking filibuster. Keep them there. Yeah, make them work. God forbid, they have plenty of vacations. They work, and God, I wish I had that job again. No, yeah, I'm actually trying to get it, but it's not because of the lack of work. It's the fact that I want to go down there and work and push them to work.
Well, there's a new draft Fed paper that indicates that illegal immigration accounted for roughly 30% of the growth in home and rent prices between 2021 and 2024. That's the Biden administration. It seems like more proof that the open border continues to be a source of many problems. Are we ever going to get our heads around this and cooperate with ICE and deal with the problems of millions and millions of people here illegally?
Well, they did it under Biden and they did it under Obama. I mean, you would basically, if you had somebody, you would call up ICE and they'd come and get it. But now you have these Democrats who are either like Pritzker, who's running for president, or others, and they want to basically not do anything for the president. If it was an Obama presidency, there'd be no problem. You just have a couple of guys go, you pick them up, see you later. Obviously, you need to address this issue because people are getting hurt, killed, raped, maimed every single day. We had a situation where a driver's license was issued, I believe, from Massachusetts, and the guy didn't speak English, crashed through a stop sign and killed a little girl. I mean, when is this going to be over? When does like common sense prevail and we don't have these far left radical DSA or others, basically doxing and threatening our ICE people who are just trying to do their job? If they have a better solution aside from keeping them here, letting them run free, then good, let's have it. But it's just no, and that's unacceptable.
Well, former Maine Senate candidate Graham Plattner dropped out. It's hard for me to tell whether he dropped out because of his obvious character weaknesses or because just they thought he wasn't going to win. That's your arena. Do you have a perspective?
Yeah, listen, I thought Susan Collins would have beat him either way. Remember, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 3 elections to get rid of her. I think she won one race with 29 points and 22 points, and then another one by 9 points. There's no way that she was going to lose to Graham Plattner. And, she's got 10,000 straight votes. She's the hardest working senator I've ever met, and very conscientious. And you may not like her on some of her votes. Well, that's the character of a good senator. The fact that you don't like some of her votes because she's doing the things that she feels is correct or right or appropriate after doing all of her research and making sure that she understands the issues. That's what a senator is supposed to do. Now, Graham Plattner, he wanted the, healthcare for all. He wanted, open borders. He wanted sanctuary cities. He wanted basically, us not to get rid of a nuclear weapon in Iran. those are the types of things that he stood for. And quite frankly, a lot of people do now in Maine, especially. And the DSA, that's what they're saying. So people have a real choice. They can go out and fight that kind of craziness, or they can, get hide somebody behind somebody like Susan Collins, and others who are, have some sanity behind them.
Well, one more quick question. I know that you've coached varsity girls basketball for a good bit. What's your opinion on the Supreme Court's recent ruling on keeping men out of women's sports?
Yeah, listen, I coached. This will be my 5th year coming up, and we had a inkling that maybe there was somebody who was a boy playing against us, but it was hard to determine. I'm glad they did what they did, but I have to reread it. I think they left it up to the states ultimately to do, but I'm hopeful, like all these liberal states, I'm hoping finally they just say, no, you can't, because I think what it did is it set the precedent. So somebody in Massachusetts or Vermont or some of those other woke states can actually go and say, hey, no more. And then the Supreme Court case will back that up. So it's about time. I mean, you have Chris Pappas, who I'm running against here, men and boys and women and girls sports, the entire delegation. Can you imagine being a grandfather, father, and your daughter and granddaughter have been training their whole lives, and then they get crushed in the finals and lose their scholarship to some guy who basically is insecure and can't compete against boys or men? Yeah, and what about the parents who are saying, oh, my daughter, no, it's a son. My daughter won. No, your son basically crushed these poor young women's dreams. And that's not right. That's not who we are as a country.
Well, Scott, thank you for your time today. Your insights are always helpful.
Great. Well, it's good to see everybody. Everyone who want to help can go to scottbrown.com, and have a great rest of the week and month.
All right. In a moment, we'll be back with your emails. Thank you for taking the time to send your emails. Your thoughts and opinions are always a highlight. Wanda emailed, I just saw where Jacksonville, Florida was hiring for the Department of Homeland Security today. And there are actually people out in front of that building protesting about ICE arresting innocent illegal aliens. Every illegal immigrant in this country is a criminal. We give them driver's licenses. The car insurance companies actually give illegal aliens car insurance so they can get a tag to legally drive on roads that they didn't pay taxes to use. Well, Wanda, I think you got the heart of this. If you're here illegally, you're a criminal. Anything that starts with illegal doesn't end up in a good spot. We need the national courage to fix the immigration issue. We have a way to immigrate legally. If we don't like it, let's change it, but let's not encourage illegal behavior. It promotes destruction. Thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with us. God is moving in the earth. Let's be a part. Good night.